So after day 1, there's been a lot more information about Skirk and her combos and more accurate rotation timings, so I would like to compile all of the calculations I've done, as well as explain why there's been such a discrepancy with people's calculations on Skirk, as they've been mostly all over the place, while also assessing just how dependent Skirk is on Escoffier, and the best alternatives if you don't plan to go for her, or lose your 50-50. Hello there, Flip here, and today it's time to talk about Skirk right before her changes because I am a gambler, predicting that she only gets text changes this week. And even then, I feel like it's still important to document how good she is in version 1 to see how much worse or better she gets by the end of it, as I don't think I've seen a video compile all of the new data we have on her. But before we do that, as always, if at any points during the video you're entertained or informed, make sure to drop a like and even consider subscribing, as I talk on various topics regarding Genshin's meta and I'll try to keep you updated. Channel members, I love you all, thank you so much for the support, and with that out of the way, let's begin. So I'm going to assume you guys know what Skirk does if you're clicking on this video, and if you don't, go watch my previous one for a more in-depth look into her kit. To give an extreme TLDR though for what's important in this video, she's a cryo DPS that can either choose to nuke enemies or use normal attacks in a rotation, and generally, unless you're finishing off enemies, the normal attack playstyle just deals more damage. Her first passive incentivizes cryo reactions besides melt to create void rifts, which increase her damage as well as her duration in her skill state. And if you want Skirk to deal damage, then you want to lean into her second passive to build a full freeze team. Her teams outside of using a full freeze setup kind of look, they're just not worth running, and you may even struggle to get her full field time if you aren't able to trigger the right amount of the right reactions. There is your TLDR. Now, over the past few days, there's been a lot of calculations for Skirk being thrown around, and a lot of them have very varying results, and I'm going to explain why. For starters, just throw out anything done by me or other theory crafters on day 1, as we were assuming a 20-second rotation and using a combo like 3 and 5C, which isn't technically her best. So if any calcs are using a 20-second rotation or that old combo, just assume it's old and not worth looking at to evaluate Skirk's strength. The current combo for Skirk should be something along the lines of 2N5 CA, N5 N4, and the rotation should be around 22 seconds long, maybe even 21 seconds, but not 20 seconds, as Skirk has downtime before she's able to start her next one. But even despite that, there are still a lot of Skirk calcs going around that may have varying results, and I'm going to explain that too. So, there's this thing in Genshin Impact called Cryo Resonance. Cryo Resonance will give you 15% crit rate when an enemy is affected by cryo or frozen. With calculating freeze teams, this is where things can get really messy, as you can either assume a freezable enemy, in which case you give your team a free 15% crit rate, or if you're assuming a boss enemy or enemy that can't be frozen, then you have to make an assumption of the amount of cryo resonance uptime you want. For me, I assume a boss enemy and try to do it based on application. If it's a double Hydra team, I just assume none for simplicity, and in a team like triple cryo Skirk teams, I just assume 100% again for simplicity, as you'll be getting close to 100% cryo resonance anyways. That is why, using me as an example, I will have triple cryo much higher than a double Hydra team, because I'm assuming one has 100% uptime on cryo resonance and the other doesn't, because that's how it most likely will work against a boss. Though if someone was just assuming 100% cryo resonance on both teams because of the assumption it's a freezable enemy, then they can actually have the double Hydra team higher, because now that team is getting a 15% crit rate boost. So both people would be correct, just within their standards, and that's why it may be confusing to compare two different people's calculations. Also, you can do a 2E Yelan rotation where she uses 2 skills of rotation for extra damage and a better energy economy. This is achieved by using Yelan rights before and rights after Skirk's field time, and if Yelan is holding a Favonius bow, this also gives 2 chances to proc Favonius, making her a good battery for Escoffier and Furina. So if you're planning on playing Skirk double Hydra, this is something I would try to learn. But going back on topic, as I said, one of the reasons for a big discrepancy in people's results is going to be the cryo resonance uptime being assumed, and I'll try to make that clearer for the rest of my Skirk calculation so it's less confusing. This is also the same reason why, despite the fact that Yelan may appear much worse on sheets compared to Shenhe, you most likely won't notice the difference that much in practice, as the BIS lineups vary between bosses and normal enemies, in which against normal enemies, double cryo teams that have higher cryo resonance uptime against bosses won't gain that advantage against normal mobs, if that makes sense. So TLDR, the reasons for varying results among theory crafters is just that cryo resonance is a pain in the ass to calculate, and it varies per team and per person calculating. Nerd ramblings aside, let's talk about the Escoffier situation because it's kinda crazy. As most people should know by now, Escoffier is a really good character, and for someone like Skirk whose best team would be freeze anyways due to her passive, you of course are incentivized to run Escoffier with Skirk. And this can obviously be an issue for some players, as there's a 1 patch difference between Skirk and Escoffier, and to have her best teammate so close, especially when Genshin is giving out like 60 pulls a patch, unless players have been saving up for a long time or just get lucky, it's kind of a ridiculous ask to assume someone is going to get both Escoffier and Skirk. So I do sympathize with any Skirk mains at this moment, and I'm sure any Kinich main who doesn't have Emily feels the same as well. But I guess I should actually show you just how impactful Escoffier is to her teams. For starters, I just want to say you need to have a premium Hydra or Cryo 5-star in order to make Skirk be good at at base, whether that is Furina, Yelan, Shenhe, or obviously Escoffier. Skirk is not Muolani or Veressa who can clear comfortably with a full 4-star team. Hydro and Cryo 4-stars are just really not that good for her, so I wouldn't recommend pulling for Skirk unless you have one of the characters I just mentioned. The best full 4-star team I could cook up for Skirk looks like this, and it is bad. This is worse than some 1.0 teams. We desperately need more good Cryo and Hydro characters that aren't 5-stars. And the funny thing is, you'd think a character like Furina would do a lot for Skirk, but the funny thing is not really. When I made my last video, I was holding on to the idea for copium Skirk options that you would just replace Escoffier with a healer like Mika or Charlotte, and that would be the best way to build Skirk teams without the chef. But the thing is, Furina isn't good for Skirk. Furina is good for Escoffier, who is good for Skirk. And in comparison to Escoffier, Charlotte and Mika just don't offer enough to justify a team slot in Skirk teams, and therefore you are better off ditching Furina on your Skirk team than trying to get Skirk to work with Furina if you don't have Escoffier. So the best Skirk team I could come up with is Yelan, Shenhe, Sitlali, in which, yo, we are getting there. That's close to 80k DPS, which really isn't that bad. This is on par with Gonyo and Risley teams with Escoffier, and Natlin DPS without their best supports. The only problem with this team is the fact that Sitlali being able to get a scroll buff, especially on a freezable enemy, can be incredibly inconsistent in practice, so your results may be worse in combat than what is actually reflected here, so keep that in mind. Also, another reason why this team is a lot stronger than using Furina teams is because Sitlali enables the Calamity of Eshu, which is around 10% better than Finale of the Deep for Skirk. Regardless, if you have Shenhe and Sitlali, then Yelan or Jingcho will give you a strong enough Skirk team to where you have no issues clearing any of the content in the game. The only thing that sucks about this though is just how much stronger the Furina and Escoffier team core is. I ran calculations of Skirk with multiple different teammates, and even if you use someone like Candice who just gives a 40% normal attack damage bonus, she's still a decent margin better than the best non-Escoffier team you're able to build. Then looking at Dahlia, who at C6 just enables 2 extra normal attacks on Skirk, he is so much better than using Skirk with that Escoffier, as Dahlia being a shielder also enables Calamity at the same time, alongside the 2 extra normal attacks. And Dahlia is most likely going to be on the Skirk banner anyways, so you don't even have to go out of your way to build him or anything. And then I can do you one better. Rosaria, a 1.0 4-star, is able to slot in on Escoffier teams, providing crit rate through her passive and enabling a more consistent Cryo Resonance, in which she's better than Dahlia and Candice while also being a very big improvement over using the best non-Escoffier team. You can literally just throw random bullshit together as long as you have Escoffier, and the difference is so drastic to the best you can do without her, it's insane. So currently, at least if you have the pulse to get Escoffier and Skirk, there's genuinely no reason for you not to pick her up, though I would still wait a few weeks to see if anything changes in Skirk's beta. The other route you could go if you don't want to get Escoffier or don't have the pulse for her is to get Skirk's signature. Looking back at the 2 non-Escoffier teams I calculated, starting with the Furina Charlotte team, Skirk's weapon is one of the strongest in the game, being a 30% damage increase from Finale of the Deep. Getting this weapon for Skirk makes her Charlotte teams better by like 10k DPS, but Skirk isn't the majority of the team's damage anyway, so However, if you look at the Shenhe Yelan team, despite the fact that the increase from upgrading from Calamity is smaller, Skirk does more of the team's damage here, and therefore the impact of her signature weapon is more noticeable. And with her signature weapon, you now have a team on par with most of the Escoffier variants. So once again, if you can build this Yelan Shenhe Sitlali team, going for Skirk's signature is a recommended route if you want to fuel as strong as getting Escoffier. All in all though, I am still upset with how dependent Skirk is on Escoffier, but assuming you do have her, I think Skirk is for sure a top 5 DPS depending on what you value. For me, I think Veressa and Malvika are still the 2 strongest DPS in the game. Hell, if you just compare Veressa's strongest team to Skirk's, Veressa outdamages her by a decent margin, while having more AoE and better team flexibility. Even if you want to remove Malvika from Veressa's team, the Cow's second strongest team is still competing with Skirk's best team, and Veressa also doesn't stop working the moment you take her out of her strongest archetype. So for my personal ranking of DPS, I don't think my top 2 has really changed. I really do hope that Hoyoverse makes Skirk stronger if they are going to make her this Escoffier dependent, or they just reduce Skirk's dependence on Escoffier, because even without the passive being as strong as it is, like with Aika and Gonyu, Escoffier most likely would have been part of the best way to play Skirk anyways, so the passive just feels like a slap in the face for no reason, and her damage should really just be higher at a base. To my knowledge, no other character in the game, not even Nouveau-Let, loses this much from not having one of their teammates. It really doesn't make sense to me. But with that yap session concluded, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like, subscribe, and comment your thoughts on Escoffier and Skirk, as I would love to hear it and I respond to almost every single comment. Channel members, your support as always is greatly appreciated, it means the world to me. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you guys on the flip side. Peace.